Now, the background of the story is that this is the time where Lot has decided to go into the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham picked up the leftovers. Abraham said, Lot, if you go this way, I'll go this way. Which one would you prefer? So Lot got the first option. And so Lot chooses to go into Sodom and Gomorrah. It was a beautiful town. Lot was a very effective missionary in that city. In fact, the whole city was under his watch. And he's got a special spot in that city of Sodom and Gomorrah, especially in Sodom. He's got like a front gate. He is the one who's got the highest authority, either who will come in, like an immigration officer. He's got that prestigious position in Sodom and Gomorrah. And when there's any time that other nations around like to invade Sodom, Abraham always sends out and help him out, and they always win in every war. So Lot gained that reputation. As the family grows with Lot had many children. He's got a few children, son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. He's got a few children while living in Sodom and Gomorrah. You see, Abraham pleaded for 50 people, remember? Lord, if there are 50 in the city, would you still burn them? And he started reducing it, said, maybe let's stop to 40. Lord, would you like still, if there are 40? So he started negotiating with the angel. He makes sure that the number of family members of Lot is within the reach of God's mercy. So let's go. This is the background. So on that very day, two angels, because there were three, remember? There were three angels visited. Yeah, with Abraham at Mamre. There were three angels. One stays with Abraham, two went down. Sodom and Gomorrah. All right? So we don't know who are those two angels. But it's an angel. Maybe it's Gabriel and somebody else, but Michael is Jesus. So Michael in the Old Testament is Jesus. Maybe that's what you said. Maybe Jesus stays with Abraham and the two angels. We never know. When we get to heaven, that's another. That would be the beautiful answer. A question that we're gonna ask from God. And so there were two angels stood at Sodom. This is at even. So the even here is about the sun to set. It's not the evening, the first evening. We're looking forward for the first sacrifice. You see, when the sun descends towards the west, that's the first part of the evening. And 3 o'clock is the time between two evenings. Jesus died in between two evenings. That's why they call it 3 o'clock. You see, in the last the week that there was a celebration of Jesus' death and resurrection, Jesus died in the book of Matthew at 3 o'clock. Between 12 and 6. So it's 3. Between two evenings. This even is before 6 o'clock. And Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. You still remember his position? And Lot seeing them, so as in a distance, when he saw the angel, he rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, the two angels said, No, tonight we will be as street kids. We would like to wander in your street. No, but we will abide in the street all night. The angels decided to spend that night on the street. And then he pressed upon them greatly. See, this statement here, this is the debate. This is the argument that Lot strongly told the angels, please, do not go in the city. I know. I'm sitting here for many years. I know what it's like the city. Leave it to me. I can do ministry to them. My family is there. I am a very influential person in Sodom and Gomorrah. In this city, you just don't know who I am. This is exactly how Lot talked to the angel. You're only a visitor here. I know that you are sent from heaven, but remember, I know these people here. Stay with me. He pressed upon them greatly. And they turned in unto him and entered into his house. And he made them a feast. So that night there was a little bit of noises. It attracts attention with the enemy. You see, Lot made a little bit of a party. So it creates attention. He made a feast and he baked unleavened bread and they did eat. You see, when can we experience as a church that will attract attention to the enemies around? There will come a time that we as a church now, when we make that decision, that it will attract attention to our neighbors. At the moment, the neighbors will just say, oh, they just walk past. All right? You have not seen yet people throwing eggs or tomato or stone at the church. Time come that it will create an attention. Lot made something, a party that like stir up the surrounding, the enemies. And so they had that event. And the story goes that they were surrounded the house of Lot. But let's go here in verses 4 and 5. But before they lie down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house around, both old and young. So this is the description. What is the environment at that time like? Is like. Now, are you aware of any events, for example, in the US about their young people this time? Last week in Detroit, in Michigan, a lot of young people making a big drama in the city, and the young people and say, so in Sodom and Gomorrah there were both young and older people from every quarter. So now this triggers a massive uproar or a havoc in that city. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, where are the men which came into this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. Now the word know him, you know exactly what is this. Yeah? It is an adult activity. This is a husband and wife activity. The Sodom and Gomorrah would like to have that activity between the old and young. So can you imagine how wicked is that city, I would say? How bad is the city? Now, when you talk about young, where are the parents? When you talk about old, where are their manners? You see? Both old and young. As an adult, you should be a model to young people. But you see, living in the city in a godless life, in a godless living, you make no difference. So here you get the old and the young people. I'd like to share with you the very last part of the story. Because at the very end, Lot was by force taken by the angel to get out of the city of Gomorrah. His wife and 2 daughters. But his wife turned around and becomes a pillar of salt. But look at the result of the 2 daughters. And they, in verse 35, the same chapter, and they made their father drink wine that night also, while they were living in the cave. And the younger arose and lay with him. What is that? incest, isn't it? This is incest. This is a practice of incest. And perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. The two daughters had a child with their father. Now, question. Where did these girls learn the idea? You only blame Sodom and Gomorrah, but you did not blame the Bible. You didn't look at the Bible side. What did God promise to Adam and Eve? The seed. Yeah? Took care of the seed. What was the intention of the two girls for Noah? They were thinking that they were part of the remnant church to carry the seed of the Savior. We have to think that their intention, they think that God, every woman, every womb in Israelites community, every womb is protected with dignity because it is a womb that will carry the seed that will kill the serpent. The two daughters of Lot, we must continue our family. We cannot marry outside God's people. You might as well sleep with your father. So when there is a combination of truth and error, that's make Babylon. This is a mixture of truth and error. There is truth, also there is error. God saved them from the fire. God, the angel had forced them out. And in their mind, they are the womb that God prepared for the Messiah. The firstborn bare a son and called his name Moab. And the other daughter also had a son called Ben-Ami, the father of the Ammonites. These two nations were the fiercest enemy of Israel. From the day they were released from bondage of Babylon back to Israel, they are not allowed to cross their borders. Constant battle until they arrive at the promised land, where the Jordan River. The last battle was in the Battle of Jericho. Remember the Battle of Jericho? That was their last battle. And then the next day, they walked into the promised land. Now, let's look at what it is like in our end time. What is the event in our end time? In the last days before Jesus come. Before Jesus come. Let's go in the book of Genesis to make sure where we're at. Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. So Genesis chapters 1 and 2. Genesis chapters 1 and 2. So maybe on the sixth day. We know that on the first 6 days, God created the planet, the heavens and the earth. And on the sixth day, in verse 26, let us make man. Yeah? In our image, in the likeness, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, that's in 26, of the cattle, over the fowls of the air, and all over the earth, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image, in verse 27. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, in verse 28, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God saw everything was good, was very good, and evening and morning were the sixth day. So on the sixth day, God created the human family, Adam and Eve, male and female. The details is on chapter 2 and 3. All right? So we know the details there on chapter 2 and 3. But in the beginning, God created Adam and Eve on the sixth day. So there was marriage being created on the sixth day. And on the seventh day, on chapter 2 of Genesis, is the Sabbath. So two sacred institutions that God established there at the Garden of Eden. Marriage and the Sabbath. The events of Lot and the events before Jesus coming, the same issues that we are facing. Marriage and the Sabbath. Now, I'll bring you to Google. Why is this so? Okay, so it was 24th of September, I think in 2015. Okay, so that's 24th of September 2015. It is the very first and the only Pope in the world, in the history of humanity, that a Pope become the speaker in a joint session in America. Now, why we as a church very focused on America? Why not in the United Nations? Because the prophecy of the book of Revelation chapter 13 is about the papacy and America. So there were three. There was the dragon, there was the sea beasts, and there was the land beasts. Okay? So the dragon, so they are the false trinity. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. They are the false trinity. But America, the Vatican, and Satan. The dragon. That's in Revelation chapter 13. Now, in September of 2015, Pope becomes the speaker in the joint session of Congress in America for the purpose of implementing that we call the Laudato Si. I think this is the Laudato Si. Laudato Si see, in this Congress, they have implemented the Laudato Si. Laudato Si is the fall Sabbath. No, I don't have the transcript. It's too much to read. But it's up. This is for you if you like to go into it. So September 24 of 2015 is the birth of the false Sabbath, the Laudato Si. So Laudato Si is a false Sabbath. It is a replacement of God's seventh-day Sabbath. That's the contents of Laudato Si. So what contains Laudato Si is that there were 17 points of that Laudato Si. Poverty, equality, sustainability. There are 17 of them. Poor, and there's a lot, about 17 of them. Identify the 17 points in this Laudato Si. And this is the program implemented by the Agenda 21. And then the first stage of this implementation is in 2030. So electric vehicles will be in 2030, all that. This is part of the Laudato Si. This is the false Sabbath. So 2015, this is the birth of the counterfeit of the Sabbath. On the same year, so the other one was 24th of September. This one is on the 26th of June on 2015. Yeah, who was the president? Says Obama, I think. Yeah, Mr. Obama was the president. So, of the same year. So of the same year is the birth of the new genesis of the new movement, the counterfeit movement. That's why 2020 is not a common year of all. It is a very unusual date, 2020, because it is a platform that becomes a springboard towards the new Genesis. 2015, births of two ideology, the LGBTQ, which is practiced in Sodom and Gomorrah. And then you have the false Sabbath, which is Laudato Si of the same year, 2015. So we are now on the stage where nations are failing for fear. They are now feeling the fear. They fail to, to control what is happening around. But at the same time, we are in a position where the church is a little bit covered with a blanket, like a bit hidden, because when they implement the temperance movement, you heard about temperance movement? How many of you are aware of the temperance movement? Maybe Jimmy now, because you're just new to the church. Yeah? We have back in the 1840s, we call it the temperance movement. Temperance movement is a movement about health and about, what's the other, Pastor? About the temperance? Health, dress reform, food, dress reform, like education. I think part of the temperance was the education movement as well back in that early 1840, 1850, 1860. Now, by 2020, the counterfeit implemented a false temperance movement. And I would say temperance movement because they will control what you eat. Very soon. Very soon. They will tell you what to eat on breakfast, what to eat on lunch, and what to eat on dinner. Fail to do so, you will be penalized. You have to QR code before you eat. You have to QR code before you drive. This is coming very, very soon. They have already put all the necessary guidelines that everyone must follow their guidelines. Before you eat, QR code. Before you drive, QR code. Before you do anything, QR code. You want to go out from a 15-minute zone, QR code. Before you put petrol, this is why Lot sitting at the front gate of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, by the way, who will be doing those? Who will be doing those? The word is Babylon. Unless we identify who is Babylon, we know who is our enemy. Yeah? The Babylon are not the people that are godless. Babylon are the people who knows God. Just like Lot and his daughters. So Lot and his two daughters comprises Babylon. A truth and error. Now, Babylon were very knowledgeable of the Bible. Babylon were the people knows the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. They have the form of godliness, but there is no power. They have no oil. They go to church every Sabbath. They sing. They become a Sabbath school secretary. They become a church elder. No doubt. Some of them were pastors of our church. Members of Babylon. This is the position where Abraham was pleading before the Lord. Now, Abraham represents the faithful remnant of God. Abraham represents the remnant faithful of God. They are the group of people who will shout to the world, "Come out of her, my people." Unfortunately, Lot joined. I would like to share with you what's the downfall of Lot. The downfall of Lot. Let's go to maybe you can see this. Can you see it? Now, when Lot entered Sodom, he fully intended to keep himself free from sin or iniquity and to command his household after him. But he signally failed. Now, husbands and wives, parents here, this is a very important point. Very important point. We don't want our daughters and our sons to be victims of sin. Very, very important. Lot, he had a privilege to get out and to choose. But his decision making fails the whole family. So, husband, Lot, he fully intended to keep himself free from iniquity, but yet living in the city full of wickedness. Now, how can you get dry in the midst of the ocean? How can you maintain and kept dry in the midst of the ocean? This is Lot. I can keep myself dry in the ocean. No doubt. I can do it. No. Failed. Failure. The corrupting influences about him had an effect upon his own faith, and his children's connection with the inhabitants of Sodom bound up his interest in a measure with this. Can you imagine? Can you imagine his children, even though they're saying amazing grace every worship, but after worship they get back into Sodom, the wickedness of the city. So the children are flipping between amazing grace and disgusting grace. Can you know what I mean? Now you worship and then you watch the Hollywood movie. This is the reality we are facing, but let us repent. We must change. We must change. Because if we cannot manage our household, the same journey of Lot is yours and mine. Any ideas you want to share? And then we go into prayer. Into seasons of prayer. This is where we're at. The birth of the two false ideology in 2015, knowing that Jesus is coming very soon. The false Sabbath and the destruction of marriage taking place very strongly, holding even our church. one day we will suffer the consequences of the LGBTQ that has been implemented since the beginning of time. Now, would you like to eat the plant-based food prepared by the enemy, or you want to have a plant-based food prepared by God? So, there are plenty of plant-based food in shopping centers. There were plenty. If you go in the shops, you can buy plenty of plant-based food. A plant-based chicken, a plant-based beef, a plant-based, everything is plant-based. You can buy them. You can also buy meat from the lab. I'll show you the meat they have prepared. You feel sick to your guts.
Sounds like something from a science fiction film, but laboratory-grown meat is rapidly becoming big business, with huge potential to cut agricultural emissions around the world. One company in the UK has just had a major breakthrough. Scientists cooking and eating a pork steak, created entirely from scratch.
Forget paddock to plate. This is test tube to tongue. Some greens and tomatoes with a side of lab-grown pork.
It was absolutely delicious. Really was, really very good. Yeah, it tasted exactly like a pork steak did.
Newcastle is a riverside city around 500 kilometres north of London, and it's where scientists are now laying claim to growing and eating the world's first lab-made pork steak.
We were really extremely pleased with the outcome.
The cell-based meat industry is taking off, with dozens of companies around the world dedicating research to it. The first lab-grown burger was cooked and eaten in London in 2013. Similar projects have been carried out in Australia. In 2019, a lab in Sydney grew kangaroo meat, and last year scientists in Melbourne cultivated a piece of lamb. The key difference here, the scientists say, is the fillet is 100% meat. No plant-based cells were added.
You start with a slurry of cells, other companies do, and then add something to try to give it a bit more texture, to bring it a little bit closer to meat. You end up with a sausage or a meatball or something like that. But what we knew we could do, which is really different, was to create meat as you know it.
So that's it.
That's it.
From that it grows. So how exactly does it work? A biopsy is taken from an animal, in this case a pig. Cells are then put into a liquid medium which feeds them. That mixture then enters another tissue incubator where the meat is grown. From this to having a pork steak in front of you, 1 month.
Correct.
This Petri dinner dish, significant for several reasons. It decreases animal farming and is a better option for the environment, cutting down on greenhouse gas emissions. Scientists say it's a solution to meeting the demand for meat as the world's population grows. One of the concerns consumers might have would be the health benefits of this. So how does it compare?
One of the integral parts of the entire process is the complete absence of antibiotics. We avoid pathogens and other contaminants.
And it's from this lab here in Newcastle. The product will go out to the world. Researchers here believe that lab-grown meat will be widely available on supermarket shelves in 10 years' time. In Newcastle, England, Jessica Millward, 9 News.
In 10 years' time. Now, what are you eating meat in the, in the shops? You never know what you're getting. That's why, as the pen of inspiration, it's time to do something. Yeah? Country living. Have a bit of your land. You don't need acreage. Just a little bit of land. Enough to plant. If not, put in a pot. Start to grow in the pots in your backyard. You don't need a big piece of land. If God will give you, please let me know so I can join with you. That's right, yeah. So the food that we ate in the past make us sick. Now they're creating enough food for us to have a good life in the future, sustainable and drug-free. Would you believe them? They're all lies. First, they make us sick. Now they think they make us healthy. That doesn't make sense. Yeah? So all this, the GM food, now they're making a lab food. From GM to lab. They're just flipping lie after the other. So, the experience of Lot, it is our prayer that will not be our experience. That we can do better with God's grace, with the power of His Spirit. That we don't just have the form of godliness, but we have the power to make a decision.